What's up, guys? Alan Kordovich from Knuckles and Knives podcast, Mr. Knuckles and Knives. Excited about today's episode. We got another special guest joining the podcast. A little bit of a different episode today. We do not have a fighter joining the podcast. We actually have the voice of the BKFC joining the podcast today. Mr. Sean Wheelock will be on with us in a few minutes. I'm about to send out the invite. Welcome him to the show, Mr. Sean Wheelock. Let's go, baby.
How are you guys?
Good,
Thank you for
Sean.
having
How
me
are
on. I
you?
appreciate it very much.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time, man. Really appreciate you. This is an honor for me. So,
Oh man, thank you. No, it's my honor. Thank you for saying that.
of course, of course. How you doing?
Excellent. Happy to be on the program. BKFC, we're rolling. We've got a nice stretch coming up. So last week was an off week off of our newer card. I still commentated. I had Combat FC, one of the few shows that I have remaining that outside of BKFC that I still am allowed to do contractually. Thanks to David Feldman for that. I feel compelled to commentate fights every week of my life. So to Combat FC in Boston, a great MMA show last week. And then BKFC in Chicago, just outside of Chicago, Hammond, Indiana, our Indiana debut, but in the Chicagoland area, just south across the Illinois border into Indiana on Saturday. Then the following week, we are in Rome. Then the following week, we have our Michigan debut, a place I did a lot when I was at Bellator. I don't think I've been there in about 12 or 13 years, Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And after that, then back to California. We're in Palm Desert. So it's cool coming off of our first ever show in New Jersey. We'll have our second show in Rome. But in between those Rome shows, on the other end of it, we have our first show in Indiana and our first show in Michigan.
Jeez, you're busy, man. How do you even remember all these schedules and the events? Like,
It's very funny because I think when I'm commentating, I'm an extremely observant person, and then in real life, I'm not that observant. Which my wife and my girls, my older daughter Ellie, you met her at the training, they'll
yeah.
laugh about. But memory's a funny thing. I can remember fights that I commentated 14, 15 years ago. But if I see that fighter, it might take me a minute to remember their face. But as soon as I have their name, like, oh yeah, I remember I commentated you a Bellator 38 in Atlantic City, and you won by second round submission versus Joe Smith, that type of thing.
Wow. That's crazy. We'll definitely get into that because I'm curious to know about all your history. But yeah, just going back on BKFC 82, New Jersey, Newark. That was an absolute spectacle. That was my second event that I had the privilege of being part of. I had media credentials in that one as well. And the other one that I attended was Hollywood, Florida,
Right.
that just passed Zombo against Arnold Allen, right? And yeah, something about this New York one though, man. It felt a lot bigger to me. Like just just the hype behind it. I don't know if it was because Mike Perry was in the main event, Connor was in the building. But yeah, I keep saying that one just felt a lot bigger to me. How did you feel about the event? How do you think it
It
went?
was great. It was huge. And, for me, I want to treat all shows equally, but there were a lot of factors that definitely made it feel bigger. Anytime Mike Perry is on, I think not just the BKFC card, but any card, it elevates that. The fact that we're just outside of New York, we're outside of, I think, 10 miles, 8 miles outside of Midtown Manhattan. Our first ever show in New Jersey. We're at an NHL building, Prudential Center, where the Devils play. We have a huge crowd. I believe I saw the report of over 10,000, a huge gate for us on the attendance, the money generated. All of those factors combined for that. What I've noticed in BKFC, anytime we're in a state for our debut, the energy is up. I think we're going to fill that in Indiana this upcoming weekend. We'll fill it in a couple of weekends in Michigan. There's just always something special about our first time in a market in a state for BKFC. That's been uniform, whether it's been California, Texas, Florida. We always seem to feel that energy. And I think that's what you and I both experienced and felt in Newark a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah, so Indiana is a new one as well, right?
So that's exactly right. Indiana's a great state. It's really special for Chris Lytle because, Chris lives in Indianapolis in the suburbs, born and raised as an Indiana guy. And this is a unique market. So we're If we fly into Chicago, I know this venue very well. I've commentated 3 separate MMA shows there, including a lot of Bellators. We did a lot of Bellators there, in the early days of Bellator, the Bjorn Rebney era when I was there. And so you drive south from Chicago, you cross the state line from Illinois to Indiana, and you're in Hammond, and you turn off the interstate, and you go to this great casino. You can actually see the Chicago skyline across Lake Michigan from Horseshoe Hammond Casino. It's a phenomenal fight venue. They do a lot of fights there, a lot of concerts. It's well storied. I believe we did our first Bellator there in 2012, and it draws from Indiana, but then it's also drawing from the Chicago market. And
Uh,
Joanna Holland is the executive director of the Indiana Commission. She's fantastic. I've known Joanna since she got the job, one of the best regulators in the country. She brought me out to do a training in Indiana, getting ready for this for my bare knuckle refs and judges courses. She's ready. This is a big debut for us, and it's another major state. It's as you see how we work with BKFC. You know, we have California now, we have Pennsylvania, we have Texas, we have New Jersey, but still, and I'm a Midwesterner, getting these key Midwest states like we now have Indiana on board is absolutely fantastic for us. Michigan then in 3 weeks.
yeah, you know what? It's amazing to see all these new doors opening up in the States for the BKFC. I'm just I gotta say, I'm just a little bit jealous because I'm from Canada, and the only place that you guys have come so far a few times is Alberta. So I'm just hoping that, more doors will start to open in Canada as well for you guys. I know the sanctioning is a whole thing over here, but hopefully in the future.
Well, I can tell you, yeah, no, and I know you're a proud Canadian. I adore Canada. I've probably been to Canada in my lifetime 25, 28 times, all through your great country. I love your people. I love your culture. I adore everything about Canada. And well, I presented back in August. There was a group in New Brunswick. I did it over Zoom, but a group of the athletic commissions got together. They're essentially trying to form my understanding what we have in the US, which is the ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports. Now, the ABC allows Canadian members, but, and I think this is wrong, they don't let the Canadian members vote. They can come, they just can't vote. I think they should be full members. Whatever, they didn't ask my opinion. So I saw a lot of these commissioners at the ABC conference in New Orleans in August, and then they invited me to speak at this. So my understanding is the Canadian commissions are coming together, trying to do their own national version, and with that, hopefully bring in bare knuckles. So the reason that we've only done one Canadian market, and that's River Creek Casino, it's Edmonton, but it's technically Enoch, Alberta. We're on a tribal commission. That's tribal land, native land. So we're not being sanctioned through Edmonton. We're being sanctioned through River Cree Nation. And then River Cree brings in the state of Wyoming in the US. Nick Meeker heads that he's the executive director, heads that athletic commission to run it. But if it were up to me, we would be doing one show a month in Canada. I think if we're up to all of us, we would be doing multiple shows a year in Canada. We have so many great Canadian fighters on the roster. The crowds respond. Canada was, one of the early adopters of MMA. It's a phenomenal fight country, as you well know. I just hope that through regulation, through sanctioning, we'll be welcomed into more places. But throughout your country, east to west, north to south, I think there are so many great markets. I know when I was in Bellator, we would do Casino Rama, which is north of Toronto. We played that place numerous times, always sold out. Even the earliest days of Bellator when I was there, 2011, when we struggled to get 500 people for Bellator in the US, we were selling out in Canada. Canadian fight fans turn out. So it's governmental right now, and what adds a layer of complexity in Canada, you have city commissions, you have provincial commissions, and you have tribal commissions. They used to have city commissions in the United States. There was actually an Atlanta commission up through the 1970s, but there are no more city commissions in the US. There's state. There's the state of Georgia commission. You still have that. So for instance, in Alberta, you have separate commissions from the city of Edmonton, the city of Calgary, the city of Lethbridge. But then you go to the west, one province over, and there is the British Columbia Commission. So I think that there's a move in Canada, my understanding anyway, to bring the commissions together, create some sort of infrastructure, try to mirror perhaps what we do in the US with the ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports. And then hopefully through that, bare knuckle will be welcomed in. So I know if you look back, and I'm sure you're a historian of this the way I am, the early days of Canadian MMA, a lot of it was done native reservations. A lot of provincial commissions, city commissions did not want pro MMA. So it took time. But we'll keep going back to River Cree is my understanding for now. But I literally would love to play everywhere in Canada, from Victoria all the way through the Maritimes. I think would be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. No, I'm from Ontario, Canada, and we have a lot of native land here as well. So if you ever want to get the word out too, like we got native land here too, man. If that's what it's got to be, then that's what it's got to be, right?
Yeah, well, like Casino Rama. So it's interesting because Casino Rama is native, but all of the Bellators that I worked in, there were a lot. Now I'm going back over 10 years, but those were still done through the Ontario Commission. But if there was a way that Casino Rama could bring us in, that would be absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you've been there personally, but that's one of the nicest casinos I've ever been to.
Oh, really? No,
Stunning.
where is that one?
Maybe 90-minute drive, hour and 45-minute drive north of Toronto from Pearson.
Oh, okay. No, I've never actually been to
Due
that.
north.
Wow. Okay. I'll have to check that out for sure. I'm in Niagara Falls, so like we have our own
Right.
casino here. Like the casino's maybe like 15 minutes from my house here, so yeah.
I would be happy to go to Niagara Falls as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, let's go back to BKFC 82 for a second. There was a unique spinning attack in the one fight, Alwale Bamboje.
Mhm.
Just curious because we did the refing course with you, right? So, and we talked about these things, no spinning attacks and stuff, but I think the way he executed that made it fully legal, right? He made the spin and then timed it so that the straight came afterwards. What did you think about that?
I think he got away with it, and I think he exploited a loophole that's probably going to be closed. So, if you
No.
recall, in my committee, or in my refs and judges training for bare knuckle, as you were a student in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I was so glad you guys came down and drove south from Ontario to Pennsylvania for that into Harrisburg. One thing that I said, and I said it a few times actually. Fighters figure it out before all of us do. Fighters are always the smartest cats in the room. They figure it out before we do. So the unified rules of bare knuckle fighting say no spinning strikes. It doesn't say you can't spin, reset, and then throw a strike. And that's what we saw. So to me, was that legal? Yes. Is that the spirit of the rule? No. That's probably a loophole that needs to be closed, I would think,
Mm.
because it's a gray area. And you don't want gray areas because it makes it so difficult for referees. So I was a founding member of the ABC's Bare Knuckle Rules and Regs Committee. I'm no longer on that committee. I would love to be invited back on, but I did my 3 years. So some smart people are on there. I think they're going to look at that, and I might have to call them whether I'm on or off that committee next year and say, you need to look at this. But fighters always figure it out, man. So my personal opinion, was it legal? Yes. Was that how the rule was written? No. It's an exploitation of the rule, but fair play to fighters, man, being smart and figuring out how to exploit those rules.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? That could be a good example for the course now too that you could
It's
include,
coming.
right? So and it's funny because I did have Alwale on the podcast yesterday, and we actually talked about that spinning attack. And you know, I thought it was super unique, and he was super proud of it too. So he was talking about having more plans of doing stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know how that would work.
And he didn't get warned. And again, the idea was, and these were in that original that I was on, bare knuckle rules and regs committee. Why would we not allow spinning strikes? Well, when we say spinning strikes in bare knuckle, we're really talking about spinning back fists, right? You're not going to throw a spinning front fist. We're talking about spinning back fists. The reasoning, and there was a lot of smart debate back and forth, is forearms, elbows are illegal. In MMA and Muay Thai and Letway, forearms, elbows are a legal strike. It's very difficult for the referee to ascertain on a spinning strike with these high level world class athletes. Did it land here? 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 It looks pretty obvious when I'm holding my forearm up on a screen, but in real time in a fight and you're on worldwide TV and there's 15,000 people, it's tough. So that was the impetus of the rule, no spinning strikes, was because it's so difficult. As a spinning back fist, this is a fist. That's technically illegal. It's legal in Muay Thai. It's legal in MMA. It's legal in Letway. It wouldn't be legal because that's not a fist. So that's why that was taken out. But Uluwale, again, full credit. He spun, he reset, and then he threw the right hand. So fair play to him. My guess, though, is that's probably going to get legislated out.
But why do you think that should be, taken out then? If he's just spinning and not actually throwing it, and he's kinda just freezing his opponent with the spin, why do you think that that should be illegal?
I think because the idea of MMA is a great question, and we talked about this in my course too. Bare knuckle is set up to be a 180-degree sport, where MMA is a 360-degree sport. So I think the idea is you don't want fighters turning. Also, in boxing and in bare knuckle, turning your back to an opponent is seen as physical surrender. It's almost seen as a physical tap. You don't obviously tap out in bare knuckle, but if you're turning your back and giving it, so you don't want fighters to give their back, even in offensive situations, because what Olawale did was beautiful. But if you see a less beautiful version of that, maybe someone actually turns their back and then they try to throw a spinning strike. And again, that's where you start to get into a confusing area for referees. Does the fighter look like he's quitting? Is he then trying to use a diversionary tactic? I think the idea is that we want or that we want bare knuckle to be a 180-degree sport. We want lateral movement, diagonal movement in and out, but we don't want it to be a 360-degree sport like bare knuckle, or rather like MMA.
Mm. I got you, that's fair.
But this is fun. This is why committees are fun. I love
Yeah,
all
that's
of this
right.
minutia, and it's so great. And you heard me say this too. It should be a living, breathing process. As a Canadian, I don't know how big of an NFL fan you are. I'm a massive NFL fan, and the NFL has a competition committee, and every year they look and they say, "What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What do we need to change?" Were we too liberal on these penalties? Were we too conservative on these penalties? So they've done a lot with kickoffs. A decade ago, they changed the extra point. 25 years ago, they put in the 2 point conversion. In the 90s, they started to say, well, we're protecting the quarterback. Well, no, we're overly protecting the quarterback. But they look at it as a living, breathing document. And I want us to have that in fighting. Just because we did something in 2017 or 2007 or 1967 for that matter, doesn't mean we should be doing it now, because fighters evolve and they always evolve at a faster pace than us. Watch an MMA fight. You think about the Smashing Machine, Mark Kerr. Watch Mark Kerr versus Morty Horenstein, Mark Kerr's UFC debut. The sport looks a lot different than it does now. Even watch BKFC from 2018 or 2019. It looks a lot different. There's always evolution, and I'm a big believer that on the regulatory side, you have to keep up. And to say, well, it worked then, it doesn't mean it's going to work now. The rules that we
Right.
have now probably aren't going to work in 5 years, and they're certainly not going to work in 20 years.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense, and you know what? I find combat sports is evolving rapidly always compared to,
Always.
like, other sports,
Yep.
right?
I
So
agree. I agree. I mean, think about when you watch MMA. If you go on YouTube or Daily Motion and watch fights, it doesn't matter if it's in Pride or in the UFC or in Hook and Shoot. How many spinning arm bars do you see? A lot. How many closed guard attacks do you see? A lot. How many calf kicks do you see? Zero. How many
mm,
teep kicks do you see? Very, very few. There's the evolution, and you didn't really see ground and pound until Mark Coleman and his Ohio State wrestling group. You didn't really start to see those overhands coming in on the entry attacks until the wrestlers came through. You think about early on, we were seeing a lot of palm strikes. When was the last time you saw a grounded palm strike in MMA? It's just the evolution of the sport.
yeah, the Bas Rutten special.
That's
the
right.
palms. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the course for a minute because like you said, and my buddy Jeremy did have the privilege to join your course, and that was an amazing experience. So
Thank you.
glad that we did that. Yeah, just want to know, like, how long have you been hosting that for? What are your plans with that going on in the future? And yeah, just just tell me a little bit about it.
Well, it's funny because I didn't have a design on that. So I always wanted to be a fight commentator. I mean, always from the time I was like 6 years old, I wanted to be a fight commentator.
Oh
So
wow.
I kind of had a plan without having a plan to be a fight commentator. Now, I was raised by my mom. I'm the only child of a single mom. My mom was a public school art teacher. We didn't know anybody who knew anybody who knew anybody who knew anybody in television or fighting or sports or showbiz or anything. I just knew I wanted to do it. One thing I did early on to be in the fight game was I started refereeing, and I started refereeing pro boxing when I was 22, which would be difficult now, but then it was a lot easier because there weren't many athletic commissions, and especially in the American Midwest, and the states that had them were pretty loose to say the least. So a 22-year-old kid with zero experience, other than I was just friends with the promoter and a lot of the fighters, I got to referee. That's not going to happen now. But that's what happened then, right? 25 years ago was a different world in fighting. So that
Yeah.
could happen. So as I wanted to be a commentator and just being around the sport, I started refereeing pro boxing at 22, and I got pretty serious on it. But then I started getting more TV work, and more commentating meant less refereeing. But that's always been with me and on the officiating side. 2015, I got appointed in Kansas as a commission member, a commissioner. I wasn't the executive director. It's a full-time job in Kansas. We have 5 appointed commissioners. You're not paid for that. You don't even get a mileage per diem or a meal per diem, which was fine with me. You get a few resume builders who do those things, and then you get people, myself and a couple of others who really care about fighters and the integrity of fighting and wanting to protect the entire world of combat sports. So that even more so drilled it into me. Through that, I was named chairman of the national in the U.S. MMA Rules and Regs Committee. We overhauled the unified rules. John McCarthy was my vice chairman. Did a complete overhaul of the unified rules in 2016. They hadn't been updated since 2001. I did that committee for 7 years, and then I resigned that chairmanship to be a founder of the Bare Knuckle Rules and Regs Committee. Through that, I'm pushing. We're trying to build a unified rules. Our first show in Utah, and my buddy Scott Bowler, who was a Lions Den fighter with Ken Shamrock, and one of the absolute best regulators I've ever met. And Scott Bowler had Utah. He said, "You guys are coming for the first time. Could you just come on and maybe speak for a couple of hours on Zoom just to our officials? Because a lot of them have never seen the sport or have a very basic understanding." Said, "Sure, no problem." I threw together a couple of videos, did it as a favor. There were, I think, 20 people on the Zoom. Within that group were a few California people who had gotten the link. Word spread to California, hey, this might be worth our time. So then I was contacted by my friend Andy Foster, another fantastic regulator, another former pro fighter who heads the California Commission. Would you do a Zoom course? Absolutely. On that Zoom course was Mike Mazzulli, who at the time was the president of the ABC, who also heads Mohegan, another great guy, great regulator. Mike Mazzulli saw that, and after that, Mike said, "I'd like to certify you to become," and he had that power as the ABC president, "to be the first bare knuckle refs and judges trainer." There are other certified trainers, like in boxing, you have Jack Reese and David Sutherland, Steve Weisfeld, Harvey Dock. In MMA, you would have people like Blake Grice, Jaron Villel, Kevin McDonald, Big John McCarthy. There wasn't a certified bare knuckle refs and judges trainer. Mike Mazzulli certified me, booked me for the national convention, and then states just started to contact me. Also, January of this year, I thought, yeah, I've got a few weeks off and I get squirrely when I'm off the road. As much as I love my family, I get a little squirrely. I thought I need to do something for the 4 weeks that we don't have a BKFC while I'm home over the holidays. And I thought, all right, I'll put together a refs and judges seminar. And we get 40 people. I think all my Kansas people will come. We'll get a few people from maybe Oklahoma, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri. If we get 40 people, great. If we get 50 people, man, that is fantastic. I told my wife, I just don't want us to lose more than $2,000. Cool. All right. And we wound up selling out, and we had 144 people from
Wow.
35 states plus Ontario. And I thought, you know what? There might be a market for this. So after that experience in Kansas City in January, I've really pushed these trainings, and I've talked to athletic commissions. So the one you attended, I was hired by the Pennsylvania Commission. I've done it for Indiana. I've done it for Texas. I've done the national course for the ABC. I've taught over Zoom for Japan through their Japanese MMA Officials Association. I'm planning something in Las Vegas for January. I'd love to announce it. I don't yet have the dates or the venue, other than it's going to be January in Las Vegas. And I love teaching. It's in my DNA, literally, because my late father was a college professor. My mom, who raised me, is a retired public school art teacher. I have teachers, educators in every single direction. My 20-year-old daughter, Ellie, who you know, who you met, who runs all of my training, she's a sophomore in college and she's studying. You would not be surprised to hear this, early childhood education.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
kind of a family thing. So for me, on an off weekend from commentating, and I only get about 8 or 10 of those a year, I love teaching. I love doing my course. I love interacting. And it's something I'm going to do more and more of. And it's a combination of me putting them on with my own money entrepreneurially, like I'm going to be doing in Las Vegas, and also getting hired by athletic commissions, be it Pennsylvania, Texas, whomever.
Mm. So you've actually only had this course since January of this year?
Well, the one I did over Zoom, the very first one I did over Zoom was about 3 years ago. But that
But the
was the start.
the
I hadn't
the
even
in
thought about
person.
teaching these courses, and that was just as a favor to Scott Buller, who heads the Utah Commission, just throwing something together for his people. But immediately it started to grow. So I had taught it in person a few times. I had taught in Louisville, I had taught in Florida, but the big one I did was January of this year. And that's when I really thought, all right, I've set up the structure of 4 hours for refs, 4 hours for judges, what you attended. I said, this is how I want to do it, because you have to find your way on the courses. And early on, like I was brought in, Colorado brought me in, but they gave me 3 hours to do both. And it's just difficult. And I had to feel my way and figure it out. A lot like being a commentator. Nobody told me how to do it. I had to figure it out. So on this course, I had to figure out, you don't want to go too long, because as much as we all love this, nobody really wants to sit for 6 or 7 hours. But if we went less than 4 hours, I feel like I'm not getting you everything. So what you attended, we had 4 hours for refs, we took our lunch break, and then we had or rather 4 hours for judges, took our lunch break, and then 4 hours for refs. I think that's the sweet spot, 4 hours for both courses. It's about a 9 hour day. And 4 hours, an hour for lunch, 4 hours, 9 hour day. I think that's the sweet spot. But January in Kansas City, I figured out the format because I was doing it myself. In previous, I was always told by a commission, we have you for this long, we need you to do this. After Kansas City, when I did it, I figured out about how long to go and how I want to do this and have the demo fighters. Now, when I'm contacted by athletic commissions, absolutely, but understand that these are two 4 hour courses. If you only have 3 hours for both, I'm not your guy, because I'm wasting your people's time. It's not fair to everybody to come in thinking they're going to learn something and then get one third of the course material.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only so much you can cover in 3 hours, right?
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, and again, it's if you look at refs and judges, we're talking about 8 hours versus worth of material. I could go 800 hours, but I also don't want to punish people. I mean, there's a reason why there aren't a lot of 5 hour movies out there, and occasionally when there are, they fail miserably. There's a point of diminishing returns. We've all been to those AMI MMA shows to see our friends fight, and there's like 29 fights. And no matter how hardcore you are, there's a time where it's like, I cannot wait to get out of here. And I never want to have anyone experience that in my course. Like, I can't wait to get out of here. That's why I've just seen it and taught this now a lot. 4 hours is the sweet spot. You give everybody a break for lunch, come back 4 hours, everyone's happy, and then they're ready to go.
no, I gotta say, such an amazing course, man. Like, I
Thanks,
was
man.
so happy to be part of that. And yeah, it's my type of course. You show up, you watch fights, you pause it, you give your opinion, you talk about fights. Like, how can you not enjoy that? And you know what? And I wasn't expecting it to be that many people there. And you had quite a bit of like established refs at
Oh, yeah.
course as well. So I'm wondering, like, what were they doing there? They were just getting qualified for bare knuckle?
So it's interesting because, and I really stress, it's kind of my ethos in life to always be inclusive. It's the way I was raised by my mom. I always want to include everybody. I always want everyone to feel welcome. It's very much my personality and my upbringing. So I want people to come, no matter who they are, their background, their experience, it's fine. So we'll have people who've come in who have never refed or judged. We'll have people who take the course who never want to ref or judge. They just simply want that knowledge. We're getting a lot of fighters and a lot of coaches and trainers taking it to get a competitive advantage. But then, like the course you were at, so we had Harvey Dock and Sparkle Lee. Those are two of probably the 6 or 7 best boxing referees in the world. And they took the course. And I found that so refreshing, the humility, just because, and they recognize this, they might be the best in the world at boxing. They're not the best in the world in bare knuckle, and they're there to learn. So when Keith Peterson was also in your course, Keith is definitely one of the 10 best MMA referees in the world. And Keith was there because they understand this is a new sport. And to have that level of humility, it's probably no different than being a fighter, right? You can go into your MMA striking course and you can be a high level Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. Doesn't mean you know how to throw a 1-2. You've got
Right.
to learn. You know that you have the capacity for greatness because you've achieved it somewhere else, but you also have to have that humbleness and that humility. So, the amount of high level professional boxing judges and refs, professional MMA boxing or MMA refs and judges who've taken my courses across the country, it blows me away. I mean, I'm really humbled. The fact that I have Sparkle Lee and Keith Peterson in my course, it
Right.
blew me away. Tom Taylor, Jack Reese has taken my course. Nick Barons. It's amazing the list of people who I get, and I really appreciate that. I'm honored that they're taking it, and I also love the fact that they're being so humble and showing that humility that they know that just because they're the best at one thing, they have the capacity to be the best at this, but they're not just going to come in cold. What I hear, the biggest feedback from the high level people who take, and by high level, I just mean simply people who have worked a lot of world title fights in boxing and a lot of UFCs, is I really didn't know what the clinch was about because the clinch has evolved in real time. And whether you come out of MMA or you come out of boxing, or it doesn't matter what you come out, you come out of Greco Roman, doesn't matter, Muay Thai, there are subtleties in the clinch. And you saw how much time, and we had our 2 demo fighters, Dustin Pegg and Nathan Rivera.
Yeah.
And you heard me say bare knuckle really lives and dies in the clinch. If you're too lenient as a referee in the clinch, you're killing the fight. And if you're too conservative and you're breaking it, you're killing the fight. And then as a judge, you have to understand what strikes in the clinch mean and where they score and where they don't score. And as you think about the sport of bare knuckle as a whole, obviously we're talking about no gloves, that's a given. But then what makes the sport unique? Well, the 2 minute rounds makes it very unique, that's for sure. And the clinch makes it extremely unique.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? That brings me on to my next question then, actually. I've been saving this one because we've been trying to plan this for a while, and then I
Yeah,
watched BKFC 81 in Manchester, and the main event there
cool.
was a little bit of a bizarre fight, right? It was James DeGale against Matt
That's
Floyd.
Floyd, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. And I think both guys were making their debut that night. And you had Andrew Glenn as the referee, I believe, right?
Yes. Poor Andrew is one of my close friends. I've noticed on the training, anytime a fight completely goes off the tracks, Andy gets that assignment. And Andy was the unsung hero of that fight. So, that main event, right? You have James DeGale, Olympic gold medalist in boxing, two-time world champion in boxing, against Matty Floyd, who's had secondary major boxing belts, not world titles, but a level just below that, and he's 15-2. So you have two extremely pedigreed boxers. You also have two guys who have never done MMA, they've never grappled, and they're new to the sport. So that was some ugly clinch fighting. And if you had a referee who is not as experienced and composed as Andrew Glenn, that fight would have looked a lot worse. It wasn't great as it was, and it would have really been a disaster. I'll just say this as an aside. That's one of the cool things about fighting. Two great fighters can combine for a terrible fight, and two terrible fighters can combine for a great fight. I'm not
Mm.
sure if there's any other sport on the planet outside of fighting where that's true. Usually, two terrible teams in a team sport make for a terrible game or match, and two great teams usually make for a great. But yeah, you think about that. Floyd and DeGale are awesome in boxing, not a great fight. But you'll see some really low level, terrible people sometimes, and it's the fight of the year. It's odd how that works out.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, I was curious to hear your perspective on that. And I thought Andrew Glenn did an amazing job in that fight. He really controlled as much as he could, and I believe that was a rare fight where there was 4 points
4
deducted as
points.
well,
I even
right?
said on air, I've been watching fights since I was 6 years old. I'd never seen that.
And
DeGale lost 3 points, or rather, DeGale lost 1 point and Floyd lost 3 points. And that's great refereeing. I'm actually going to show that in Vegas and show that in my training in 2026. I'm such a believer that you have to be situational as a judge, but especially as a referee. Look, you have a main event. You have a 15-2 guy who's come to England from Australia. You have an Olympic gold medalist and two-time world champion fighting in his home nation, England. You have got to give those guys more slack than the opening card of the night, because the opening card of the night, that's probably a disqualification. You have to have a sliding scale. Just like you're going to allow Mike Perry to take damage that you're not going to allow a 19-year-old kid who's in his BKFC debut, who's 2-1 in his pro MMA career. You have to have a sliding scale. When I was on the Kansas Commission, we would talk about that all the time. The threshold for stopping two Amis who are 22 years old, and it's both their second Ami fight, you're going to stop that fight a lot faster than you are if you've drawn a UFC assignment. That's just the reality of it. Some fighters appreciate that, some don't. But treating every fighter equally in terms of respect, absolutely. In terms of what you allow, what you tolerate, no, you have to be situational in that. That's a great example of situational refereeing, because you saw that type of fight on the prelims, that's a disqualification or maybe a double DQ. But in the main event, you have to let that ride.
right. Yeah, and you know what? In the end, it seemed to have calmed down by the end of it a little bit, but super bizarre fight.
Oh
I've
my,
never
yeah, weird. I think that's the weirdest fight in BKFC history.
for sure. Okay, let me ask you about this is another thing I was interested about. Budva, Montenegro,
Yeah.
right? So that was your first time there as well, right? And so what happened there? You guys, I remember I was trying to watch the event. The time started and the event just wasn't happening. I'm like, man, what's going on? Am I on the wrong channel? Is it on the zone? Is it on BKFC app? I went on both things. Neither one of them was playing it. And then on Instagram, I just seen the thing that said it was delayed. And then I seen that they started the event, but then just ended up canceling it because of a storm.
So, some of the smaller BKFCs internationally, Lytle and I actually commentate those out of a studio in Orlando, Florida. So,
Oh.
Lytle and I were in Orlando. We weren't there. Now,
Oh.
like Manchester, we were there. We'll be in Rome. We were in Spain last year. We were in Italy this year. We were in Dubai. But some of the smaller cards, we're not on site. They still travel us. It's very, very similar. It's just we're not there. It's not just the cost of Chris and me. To have two commentators on site, you add a lot of layers of people and cost to a show. It's not even just a cost factor, it's a technical issue. It can be difficult sometimes on smaller shows and smaller venues to get everything sent back. It's easier just to have the pictures and the sound and have your commentators in a controlled environment like a studio in Orlando, Florida. So Lila and I were told that there were storms in the area. We knew that it was an outdoor venue. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen. But then we're commentating the fights as we do a one take. When we do that, I mean, we're going straight through in live. I think there was a delay in the transmission, which Lila and I were unaware of. And then I believe it was the feature fight, right? Because it was right before the co-main, the feature fight. All of a sudden, there's this gust of wind, and
Yeah.
Lila and I are commentating. Obviously, we're not there. We're in a studio in Orlando. but we can see that like everything is just blowing around in the ring. We're like, well, this is very interesting. And Dan Mergliotta's pant leg is going crazy. And then we hear people screaming and we see stuff falling, and then we go completely to black and we lost the satellite transmission. And so Lila and I just said something and then we paused. And then I think they broke the stream entirely. And then we came back and then we did the close. So we really knew about as much as everybody else watching. But then the reports, Jeff Houston was on site and talking to the fighters and the team we had on site in Budva. I guess it was just a huge storm that came in. Montenegro translates literally to Black Mountain.
Yeah,
So we're in a country that has mountains and we're at an outdoor venue on top of a mountain.
yeah.
And it was subject to a lot of wind and a lot of rain and a violent storm. And unfortunately, that's what happened. Fortunately, nobody was seriously injured. And fortunately, too, to a lesser extent, but it's still important, that didn't happen at the beginning of the show. We got in the vast majority of the fights. I believe that we got through the feature fights. We just had the co-main and main left. But yeah, that was pretty odd. Not one of the oddest things I've ever seen in fighting, because I've seen a lot of odder things, especially when I commentated for M1 in Russia. But that was definitely odd.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so what happens to like the co-main event guys and the main event? Do they rebook them or do they still get paid? Because there was one guy I was really looking forward to watching was the main event, Vaso,
Right.
who's I'm from the Balkans as well, right? I was born in Bosnia, which is part of the
I did
Balkan.
not know that. That's
Yeah,
excellent. Vasil Bakacevic is who you're
yeah.
talking about. That's
Yeah.
right.
And so he's a big superstar in the Balkans. So like I was really looking forward to his fight. So I'm just curious, like, does he get another fight with the BKFC going on? Are they rebooking that or what's happening?
And I'm guessing or I'm speculating. My speculation is you certainly are going to get show money. You're going to be compensated for your time because that's nothing you did wrong. It's not like you didn't turn in your medicals or you missed weight. So there's going to certainly be money paid to those fighters, I'm presuming. And then they're going to put them on the next card. Now, they might have something else booked in boxing or MMA or kickboxing, even. It might be that they don't have visas to come to the US. I imagine you're going to see those fights rebooked, or certainly those fighters rebooked. That's through no penalty of their own. I've commentated shows before where the power has gone out in the arena, all
Wow.
sorts of crazy things happen. It's called force majeure, is the term that something happened beyond anybody's control. So, again, without knowing for sure, there's going to be some level of financial compensation to those fighters and there's going to be an effort. And we really pride ourselves as putting fighters first in BKFC that they're going to get booked in some.
Yeah, I love that about the BKFC, man. I love that you guys take care of the fighters. That's definitely super important. I mean, the fighters are the talent. So without the fighters, where
Absolutely.
oh, you know. Yeah, and I think Vaso ended up taking a boxing match right after that he won in as well. But yeah. Uh
And I'll just say, and that's part of BKFC too, is that we allow fighters to fight other combative sports. Now, you're not going to be allowed to fight another bare knuckle organization if you're under contract to us, unless you got permission. And there has been permission granted from some European shows to fight on, say, in the Czech Republic or in Russia or Ukraine or Poland. But still, you'll see BKFC fighters fighting MMA, fighting boxing. David Feldman is the son of a promoter. Marty Feldman, who's in the Philadelphia Boxing Hall of Fame. David Feldman was a professional fighter himself. He understands that if we're only giving you one fight every 10 months, you have to make a living. If you have an opportunity to box or to do MMA, that's great. So whether that's Vaso Bakocevic doing boxing or when Mike Perry boxed Jake Paul, there was a lot of consternation when David Feldman allowed Mike Perry to box Jake Paul, and I thought, "This is the ethos of our company." David Feldman said, "Well, we don't have you booked. Why am I gonna stand in the way of you making a great payday? We just don't want you to fight bare knuckle." Now, if he was gonna fight Jake Paul bare knuckle, that would be a different conversation, but no problem at all. And it was interesting how a lot of the media saw that as a negative on BKFC. I saw it as a positive on our company, on David Feldman. He's allowing someone to go out and earn a lot of money, and it doesn't hurt BKFC. And when we have another fight for Mike Perry, he'll come back. And that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah. And yeah, that's super cool of Dave Feldman because I imagine that would have been a huge payday for Mike. And yeah, you know what? Maybe Jake Paul needs to repay that in the future and come into the BKFC and take the gloves
I
off.
would love that. I would absolutely love that. There's
Yeah.
no doubt.
What do you think about Jake Paul? Do you think he's evolved into a real boxer?
Oh, absolutely. So so on Netflix, I've done the two Netflix. I did Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. I was the judging and rules analyst on Netflix, and then I had that same role on the Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor 3 card in Madison Square Garden. So I'm hired by Netflix, but MVP, which is Jake Paul and his business partner Nikisa Badarian, are part of that. I also was one of the commentators of Jake Paul box my buddy Ben Askren.
Mm,
I think about Jake Paul. If he didn't have the background he did, being a Disney actor as a child, all the social media, people take him seriously, and I find it pretty funny when boxing people who should know a lot better, not fight people, but straight boxing people, will criticize his opponents. Look how fighters are built in the United States. Find any American world champion. I say American because it's different in Europe and in Great Britain and in South America, Mexico, Asia. But look at any American champion age 35 or younger. Go on the box rec and look at their first 8 fights. You're not going to see a lot of winning records there. So for people to attack Jake Paul, oh, who did he fight? Well, who did any of these guys fight? Would you rather have him fight Ben Askren or would you rather have him fight a guy who's 0-22?
yeah,
That's the way boxing is. Boxing has this weird record obsession, but I think that Jake Paul is absolutely legitimate. I think he's a brilliant marketer. He's a really smart guy. He's a big guy. He was a high school wrestler in Ohio. He's physical. He's strong. He's fully committed. He used to be trained by my buddy BJ Flores. BJ told me his work ethic. There are a lot of Jake Pauls out there in boxing. You just haven't heard of any of them because they're toiling away, building themselves up to an NABF fight or an NABO or a USBA fight. But he is doing everything right. He's just doing it on a scale that nobody ever sees. Instead of boxing at the Ramada Inn in Hayes, Kansas, he's boxing Mike Tyson in front of 80,000 people at
yeah,
Cowboys Stadium, right? On Netflix, but he is following the path of what everybody who aspires to be a world champion, who's an American right now in this era of boxing, is doing, which is a slow build to your career. In MMA, if you're 6-0 and you fight a guy who's 7-1, that's just a normal co-main event on a regional show. But in boxing, if you're 6-0, you're fighting a guy who's like 3-58. That's
yeah,
just the cultural difference of the sport. So now I'm a big Jake Paul fan as a person and as a fighter. I think he's someone literally everything that he has done in his boxing career has been correct.
yeah. You know what? I like Jake Paul too, man, and I feel like he's turned into a real boxer for sure, and he's dedicated his life to it. And like you said, that's a great point you bring up because I've heard Jake bring that up as well before when he talks about guys like Canelo or Floyd. And if you look at their record, their first 10, 15 fights, you wouldn't know any of the guys that they fought. Their records were probably terrible, like you said, and they were probably fighting on an undercard of somebody.
That's
Jake
right.
Paul is headlining in front of all these people in his like third, fourth, fifth fight. He's the main event. So I mean that's got to come with pressure alone. And it's Jake Paul in the end. He's not going to go
Yeah.
just fight anybody. He's got to fight somebody that's a big name, right? But what do you think
Yeah,
about the
absolutely. And there's the expectation, you want to see Jake Paul. So who's he going to follow Mike Tyson with? Well, it's not going to be a guy who's 12-14 at the Ramada Inn, right? I keep picking on the Ramada Inn, but we have a lot of those in Kansas. But a small venue that hosts no disrespect to the Ramada Inn people, but a small venue that hosts. So why not fight Gervonta Tank Davis? You have to do that type of fight in this situation. We're in an era. Look at the UFC. They're talking about fighting at the White House, and they will. Look at their partner at TKO, WWE. We're in an era where you have to mix fighting with entertainment. You can go too hard in one direction and be gimmicky or lean too hard into the music or the showmanship, but also you just can't roll out 10 boring fights. You have to have that level. I mean, look at BKFC. We have great fights, but you were there in Newark. You saw the entrances. You saw the lighting. That's a very, very expensive proposition, but you have to do that to be taken seriously as a major fight organization. Whether you're bare knuckle or MVP with Jake Paul, the UFC, it does not matter.
Mm, I agree. I think Jake Paul should fight Darren Till.
They've been trying to make that fight for a long time, and I know David Feldman is trying to get Darren Till with us as well. He's
Yeah,
a pretty desirable free agent right now.
he is. And you know what? Him and Mike Perry have quite a bit of history too, and that would be interesting to watch. And I think Darren looked absolutely dangerous in his last fight against Luke Rockhold. The way he finished him was
Absolutely.
unbelievable. So, okay, back to you, Sean, because this is an interview on you, not Jake Paul. Let me ask you, what okay, so what is one of like your favorite venues, whether it's let's say
Question.
combat sports. What's your favorite venue? Or
Yeah, I don't know if I have. Well, no, actually, I can answer that. I can answer that. Is Memorial Hall in Kansas City, Kansas? How's that? And that's because that's where I was forged as a fight fan. So I'm old enough to have seen the end of the territory days of wrestling. I don't know if you're a wrestling fan or not, but wrestling up until the early 90s still had the territories, right? We had the Central States Territory, which is part of the NWA. The Central States Territory was based in Kansas City, downtown Kansas City, Kansas, at Memorial Hall. Every single Thursday night of my childhood, every single Thursday, 52 weeks, a year, they would have live pro wrestling at Memorial Hall. So I saw a lot of pro wrestling there as a kid. I saw a lot of boxing there as a kid. I saw a lot of kickboxing there as a kid. As I got older, I got to referee boxing there. I got to commentate my very first MMA show in 2006 in Memorial Hall. That's my favorite venue. Now, my daughters, Ellie and Hadley, would tell you it's a dump that smells like 1936, and they would be accurate on both counts. But nostalgia plays a big part in things. So I love Memorial Hall. Outside of that, going to Japan is always such a thrill. I was so honored. I was the final English language commentator for Pride. My first show was at Saitama Super Arena. I've been back to Japan to commentate for M1. While I also did a boxing there for UFC Fight Pass in 2019. I love going to Japan. Japan is one of those countries when you do a fight, it just feels important. Even if it's not important, which it usually is in Japan, it feels important. Anywhere in Japan is great, but yeah, if you come to Kansas City, I'll take you to Memorial Hall. It definitely smells like the 1930s in there. I think that's the last time they mopped the floors, but it's one of those great venues, man.
that's amazing. So you were born in Kansas, right?
I'm a Kansas City native through and through.
So you live in Kansas still?
Yes, I do. I'm speaking to you from my home in Shawnee, Kansas. So I live, a lot of people like sports geography. So I'm on the Kansas side suburbs. Kansas City is a unique city. Half of our metro is in the state of Missouri, the other half is in the state of Kansas. So I'm about a 40-minute drive west of Arrowhead Stadium.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you just always stayed in Kansas.
Yeah, other than college, my short lived and ill-fated college career at Arizona State University. No, I'm such a Kansan. I love being here. I think it's the best travel city in the United States. Most weeks of my life, including this week, I get on a plane, and it's the Kansas City is the largest centrally located city in the United States,
Oh, wow.
and so when you travel all the time, as I do, it's a great city. It's chill, it's laid back. We're about 2.2 million people, which is just the right size of a city for me. And my wife is from the south of England. It fits in with what she grew up with. It's great for my daughters to raise. I live 12 minutes from my mom's house. I absolutely adore being in Kansas City and very proud of that and very proud too to be on the Kansas side.
Oh, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. So you've done every event for the BKFC. You haven't missed one, right?
Not one. And I did 127 straight Bellators until they decided they didn't want to have me around anymore. And I never missed a show. when my wife went into early labor with our younger daughter Hadley, who is now 14 years old. I was there for the birth of Hadley, and then I still made it to the fighter meetings, and of course commentated the fights. So I'm designed to be there. My joke is at BKFC, if I'm not there, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. I'm not a guy who's asking for a week off. We do every show, every fight, every bout. So I believe we're at 136 at BKFC, 136 or 138. I didn't know the number until they got rid of me, but then I counted it up out of morbid curiosity. I did 127 straight Bellator. But yeah, I do not miss. And if I do, good things have not happened, unfortunately. I'm not taking the week off.
Mm, geez, hardworking. That's super impressive because like the traveling must just be a lot, because
I
even
love it. You know what? It's something that people talk about, like, oh, maybe glamour of travel. So this is what I've kind of concluded, right? Most people's experience with traveling is a vacation, and fair enough. Until I started traveling for a living, my experience with travel was a vacation. You could have a blast traveling, and I love it. I can't wait to get on a plane. I'm flying to Chicago tomorrow. I see Lytle, and we hang out, do the fighter meetings, and commentate. And I love it all. It's still work, but you can still have a lot of fun, but it's not a vacation. There's no glamour, even if you're at great hotels and you're sitting in first class, you're being picked up in nice cars. There's not a level of glamour to traveling. It's still a job and you're working. I just happen to have my dream job and do something that I absolutely love. Traveling is not for everybody. And if you travel hardcore for a year, you're going to find out if you're in that very small percentage of people who can travel all the time, because I'm wired for it. And it would have broken me 2 decades ago if I wasn't. But you'll find out very quickly if to be someone who travels 35, 40, 42, 45 weeks a year, if that's right for you or not. Quite frankly, it's not right for most people. And I understand why. You definitely have to be wired a little differently to get on a plane every week. Now, my buddy Justin Roberts, who's one of the best ring announcers in the world, he does AEW wrestling. He does 52 shows a year. Like, I'm
Mm.
like at 42 or 40. He does 52. He does every single Wednesday for AEW plus some pay per views. That's even a level of hardcore beyond me. I still get a few weeks off, and then I go and teach my refs and judges courses. But Justin's doing 52 weeks a year getting on planes for AEW. Insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like I found out already just from the last two events that traveling is just not for me, man. Because like, you know what? I flew to Florida. That was okay. It was a little bit easier, but then driving to Newark was a little bit tougher. It was a 6.5 hour drive. My
Oh,
wife
yeah.
drove out there. So do you ever drive to any events? Are they ever that
I
close?
will drive to Omaha and I will drive to Wichita. And it's funny because early on in your career, when you're hustling, and I was a radio reporter in my very early 20s, late teens, early 20s, making no money, driving around doing all this. I wasn't even doing commentating. I was reporting on like college football, driving to Manhattan, Kansas, and Lincoln, Nebraska, and Ames, Iowa, right, and Columbia, Missouri. And you're thinking, man, if I can get to a point in my career where I can just start getting on planes, and then when you fly every week, something weird happens. When you look at the schedule and you say, hey, I have Omaha. I get to actually drive. This is awesome. I'm not getting on a plane this week. I get to get up and drive my personal vehicle. And it's only about 2 hours and 45 minutes or 3 hours. So I kind of have a 4 hour radius rule. If it's within 4 hours, I'm going to jump in the car. If it's more than 4 hours, then I'm going to go ahead and I'll take the flight.
Mm. Yeah, I guess you can be a little bit more on your own schedule when you're driving, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and you can definitely control your variables much more
Yeah,
than when you're at the mercy of the airlines, where unfortunately you can control no variables whatsoever.
for sure. Okay, so how do you prepare for like a fight night? What's your process? Do you still get
Love
nervous
that.
for these fights?
Now, it's weird. I don't. Now, I'm a long time grappler. And why I actually so I trained at Trey Ogden, the UFC, his gym. I used to be the worst person there. I don't think I'm the worst person. I'm definitely in the bottom 20%, but I'm not no longer the worst person there because I've been hitting some subs lately. But if I got booked into a pro grappling match, I would be so nervous and terrified. I think simply because I had the advantage of doing broadcasting from the time I was 18 years old, I definitely get in the mindset and I get focused. I don't experience nerves, which is great. And if I did experience nerves, I don't know how I would prevent them. And I don't even know. I think it's just a lot of repetition, honestly. I think you get to a certain point and it's comfortable. But so I'm glad you asked me about my process. This is something I really take a lot of pride in. My commentary in the air, look, it's subjective. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't. Most people don't pay attention. It's cool. What's not subjective is my preparation. I sit down with Lytle on BKFC, or like when I did Combat FC last week, Rico DeShulo, who fights for BKFC, was my color commentator, my broadcast partner on that. Doesn't matter who I'm with. Every show, I treat every fight, every fighter, every show, every promotion the same. So it doesn't matter if you're the first kid up or if you're Mike Perry, you're going to get a sit down interview. Depending on how talkative you are, it's going to go somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 minutes. I'm going to ask questions. It's all going to be in confidence. And so it's not like, hey, he said this. How do you respond? It's in a vacuum, it's in confidence. And we stress that the confidential nature of this. So, for instance, I'll ask, what's the focus of your training? I'll ask things like, break down your opponent for me. Where do you think they're good? Where can you exploit them? Where do you think they're not so good? I tell them I want to see the fight through their eyes and their opponent's eyes, and I do everybody on the card. Now, when I was at Bellator, especially at the end, we had an executive producer, and he said, well, why do you speak to the undercard fighters? And I said, well, why wouldn't I? Because I'm commentating them. And I know for sure that it doesn't matter who you are, what you're getting paid, where you are on the card, how famous or how unknown you are. That's the most important fight for you of the night. So whether your first prelim or main event, it's just as important to both people. So I'm going to treat everybody equally, and that's showing full respect and giving them their due that it is the most important fight of their life for that situation. So it's not as though there's a sliding scale like, well, my main event guys, I'm talking for 20 minutes, my prelim are 5 minutes, my mid card are 10. Doesn't work that way. Everybody gets the same fighter interview. We're going to go through confidentially. I'm going to ask these questions. I want to see the fight through their eyes, their opponent's eyes. So when you hear Lytle and me on the air say, in our fighter meeting, he told us that his jab is the most important punch. I'm saying that, but now I'm saying that in a situation where it can't be used against them. I don't want that to come out early because now the opponent can change their preparation. But once the fight starts, it doesn't matter. The fight is over. So now it's fair game, and we talk about that. So I'll give you an example. Yevgeny Kordonov, last year in his fight against Ruben War in Los Angeles, said in our fighter meeting, 80% of the punches that I throw in this fight are going to be jabs. And about 80% of the punches he threw were jabs. And Lytle and I talked about that on air. Kordonov said 80% of the punches were going to be jabs. His key to victory is jabs. He has to keep Ruben War at range with the jab. He's going to be cracking the jab variety. And that's how the fight played out. There are a lot of commentators who never mix with the boys. They never want to sit down with the fighters. They get a research packet. They show up, they talk about it, and they leave. That to me is like doing a fight without a training camp. It's inconceivable to me. My favorite part outside of doing play by play is the fighter meetings. I want to see them. I want to understand them. I want to know them as human beings. And it's to the point you develop very good friendships. In the co-main event in Newark, I'm really close with Christine Ferry and I'm really close with Jessica Borga, but I have to be dispassionate. And in that moment, I don't care who wins. I don't care who loses. All I care about is doing the best job that I can do in that moment. And then I reached out personally and privately to both fighters afterwards. But in that moment, I've got to be completely neutral. If you're not neutral as a commentator, especially in fighting, then I think you're valueless. I think you have to do your prep, and I think you have to be neutral. And those aren't subjective; those are absolutely objective.
Mm. And you can tell, man, you can tell you
Thank
really
you.
are super passionate about this, even just the way you're explaining everything, and just your commentary is phenomenal. Like
I appreciate that. Thank you.
about that. I think you and John Anik are at the top of the mountain when it comes to comedy.
Appreciate that, and I'll tell you. There aren't a lot of other combat sports commentators that I listen to or look at and go, "Wow, they're phenomenal." John Anik's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think John is great. I know John a little bit. We're very friendly. I think if we lived closer to each other, we would probably hang out. I think we have similar personalities. I like John a lot. John is amazing. John is an absolutely fantastic commentator. And where I get the situation of having the consistency with Lytle and a two-person commentary setup every show, he's getting different analysts. He has three people, and the dynamic with three versus two really changes, especially in fighting. I think the world of Anik. I think the world of him as a commentator and as a person. He is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, me too. 1 second, Sean. My
Absolutely,
my light went out here. This is the second time this happened to me, actually. 1 second. Sorry
no
about.
problem at all.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of John Anik as well. I love listening to his commentary as well. So let me ask you about the World Cup, because that's super interesting to me as well. I grew up playing soccer my whole life too. So when I heard that you commentated for the World Cup, I believe 2006, right?
2006, I did for Sirius XM Radio. Sure did.
So how did that come about, and what was like your initial reaction when you found out you were going to be commentating for the World Cup?
I definitely want to tell this story. So I started as a soccer commentator. I was a radio reporter. The first real commentary play-by-play gigs I were getting were in soccer, indoor soccer, and the Major League Soccer. I wanted to do fighting. There just wasn't a lot of fighting out there. I'm talking about 25 years ago. And just weren't a lot of jobs. And I wound up getting one of the big jobs, which was Pride in 2006, but there were more soccer jobs. And not a lot of people were lining up to do soccer. So I did indoor soccer, I did Major League Soccer, always with an eye on eventually I want to be a fight commentator. 2006, and by this point, I had done a few things on ESPN. I had done a ton of regionals in Major League Soccer. I had done some stuff for Fox International, and I got hired to do the World Cup. I was in Germany for 39 days. I missed Ellie, my older daughter, who's 20 now. I missed her first birthday, but that was okay. It was a transformative experience. And where it was transformative is I came home and I thought, I have now accomplished everything that I want to accomplish in soccer. I was still really young. And I thought, I've done a World Cup. And unless I move to England with my English wife, I'm probably not going to work in the Premier League. And even if I do, I think my Kansas accent would probably disqualify me from working in the Premier League. I would just be seen as a novelty if I was seen at all. And I thought, what I really want to do now is focus on fighting. So my buddy Joe Kelly was the owner of Titan, which has unfortunately since gone out of business. But Joe Kelly was the founder of Titan. He eventually sold it. And I said to Joe Kelly, who was doing fights, if I can get you a TV deal locally, will you let me commentate? He said, absolutely. And I knew some local cable through my soccer work. It was on Metro Sports in Kansas City. And we did from Memorial Hall, we did a Titan show. LC Davis, who wound up fighting in Bellator and WEC, was on that card.
Mm.
And from there, I did a few Joe Kelly Titan shows. I put together a demo reel, and Pride had an LA office. They just parted ways with Mauro Ranallo. I knew they were cycling through a lot of different people, Lon McCarron, Damon Perry. They hadn't settled on anyone. And a guy named Jerry Millen, who's one of my best friends to this day, took a chance on me. I had never done a fight higher than Titan, and he hired me for Pride and took me to Japan, and I never looked back. And that was my exit from soccer and my full entry into combat sports. But getting to do the World Cup, it really allowed me to feel emotionally satisfied that, again, I felt like I had done everything that I wanted to do and quite frankly could do in soccer. And I was ready to move on, and best decision professionally that I've ever made.
Mm. Yeah, that's another great thing on your resume. Great accomplishment. I still
Thank
can't
you.
believe you did that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I can't either, dude. I'm telling you, but I am still a massive, massive soccer fan
Oh
to the
yeah.
point where when we arrived in Manchester, I took a shower and then I grabbed Lytle and we walked 3 miles down to Old Trafford and I went to the team store and bought Ellie a t-shirt. So Hadley didn't want one, but I bought Ellie a Manchester United t-shirt. So I am a hardcore soccer fan, and what's weird because I don't commentate soccer and I haven't in a long time, I can be more of a fan. I know that sounds strange, but when you're not working in a sport, you can relax more. When you're working in a sport, you're feeling and looking at other things. I can just sit back and watch soccer, watch Manchester United, and just be a passionate fan, and it's really great.
Well, you got the World Cup coming, to North America, right, next year?
Yeah, including Toronto, including Kansas
Yeah,
City. So there you go.
that's
2026
huge.
next year.
Listen, yeah, I did have a bunch more questions for you, but you know what? We can do this next time. I really
Let's do
appre
this again,
yeah,
absolutely.
I
And I don't
really
want to be, don't want to come across as not
no,
gracious at all,
no.
but real life of homework calls.
Of course, I was just enjoying the conversation so much, like, I had so many
Likewise.
questions for you, right? And, you know,
Let's do this again. Let's
yeah.
book a time and let's do this again. Man, you're a great guy. You and your partner are awesome guys. First of all, I'll tell you on a personal note, it meant a lot to me. You both came to Harrisburg. You guys were in Newark. And for you to ask me to be on the show, it's my pleasure. And I mean this. Let's book another time and we'll definitely do it again soon.
Yeah, 100%, 'cause, next time we talk, I want you to tell us more about your book that you did with Art Davie as well.
Absolutely.
That's super interesting. But, yeah, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time, and hopefully I get to see you in person soon. I will not be at the Indiana one, but I'm looking to come to more events in the future, so, yeah, hopefully I get to see you soon, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I will encourage you Google your home in Ontario to Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Maybe we can see you at that Bellator in November. It's Soaring Eagle Casino. And yeah, in the meantime, let's definitely talk. Get a hold of me, and I'd love to be back on the show. Thank you so much for your support.